Cheers, guys. Good old Bex. Epyx911, welcome to the Elitist Geek. And tonight's show, Monday. Topics, Wasteland 2. Wasteland 2 is nearing completion. And I know I've come down hard on early access. And I know a lot of you guys, because a lot of you blasted me for it, don't agree with my take on early access. You love early access games. Fair enough. I think there's one thing that we can absolutely fucking agree on. And what is that? That we just want Wasteland 2. You know, for me, the 2000s has mostly been about the JRPG. And the reason being, the kind of turn-based, non-linear Western RPG that I grew up with, for all intents and purposes, died in the 2000s. For me, Baldur's Gate 2 was the last true turn-based, tight storyline, open RPG world that I'd played. And sure, there were other RPGs that came along, but it was really, for me, until Dragon Age 1 came along, there was a long drought of not much cool on the Western RPG front. Sure, we had our MMOs, whether it's EverQuest or World of Warcraft, and sure, I could scratch the itch that I had for an open sandbox-style RPG, but I don't always want to play multiplayer, and I'm sure some of you agree. Sometimes all you want to do is play single player and enjoy the single player RPG experience. So wither the games. Where the hell were they? Well, there's a couple of cool gems that were out there. If you're not a guy that's, or gal that's puts a huge emphasis on graphics, well, Jeff Vogel from Spiderweb Software has delivered outstanding turn-based RPG games, very similar to Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. Not as graphically finessed, right? But in terms of combat system, in terms of itemization, certainly in terms of storyline, Jeff Vogel delivered. But for that AAA title like Baldur's Gate, we basically had to wait until Dragon Age 1. But the future seemed very hopeful. I know a lot of my friends, when Dragon Age 1 came out, we were hopeful that RPGs were back on track. And then super disappointed with Dragon Age 2. And it's not that Dragon Age 2 was a terrible game. I don't think it was a terrible game. I thought it was a decent game. But it went in a different direction. I thought it moved away from the traditional model too much to try to engage the larger audience. And you can't blame them. That's a business decision. Fair enough. I get it. But that just left me starved and wanting that traditional RPG experience all the fucking more. So in 2012, when Brian Fargo starred in that now iconic Kickstarter video where he talked about the pitfalls of PC publishing and kind of worked that humor right into the video, I was hooked. I was fist pumping. I was, fuck yeah, turn-based RPGs are back, baby. I was stoked. And whether you agree with me or not on the early access front, you know my opinion. I think early access stinks, but I respect all y'all's opinions if they run contrary to that. The beauty of our gaming hobby is that we can have different opinions, but one thing I think we all agree on is we can't fucking wait for Wasteland 2 to be released. Those of us who like that type of game. I think Wasteland 2 is going to be phenomenal. And to hear the article talk about 50 hours of gameplay, well, if I think back to the old school Interplay games, there was some grinding, but there were dozens and dozens of hours of moving forward and not having to rehash dungeons. You take the original Bard's Tale, for example. you had to do some grinding, especially in the start, to get your characters to a point where they could even fucking survive. Because one or two streets away from your starting area, you'd be met with certain death. You had to wean yourself on a diet of rats and kobolds and a huge amount of fucking luck to just get the initial traction for that game. But fuck, did it pay off. And when it did, my argument is you didn't need to do a lot more grinding. You could, but you could basically plow through the storyline and you were in for a good 40-hour gameplay experience without grinding. And I honestly think that's what Wasteland 2 is going to deliver. Old school, Western RPG, very little grinding, the option to do it if you like. And you know what? There's a time and place for grinding. Sometimes I love it. Sometimes I love grinding, and it was why I was so disappointed with level scaling in Skyrim and Oblivion specifically, and why I liked Oscuro's rebalance mod. Because for me, there's nothing more satisfying than gearing your fucking hero up, or your party, right? And going back to the dungeon that used to give you such a hard time and just absolutely fucking laying waste back and basically getting your fucking revenge. Curb stomping every fucking monster that posed problems for you and your party. And I think Wasteland 2 is going to deliver in that front as well. I don't see a lot of level scaling. I see a lot of areas, open areas, and choice. I see divergent parallel storylines that you can engage in. If the beta is anything to go by, I think we're in for a fucking treat. Not just gameplay-wise, but I think they've done an admirable job of pushing Unity to deliver decent graphics. I don't think a turn-based game has to be bad. You know, I take a look at some of the turn-based RPGs that I've enjoyed the last year, and sure, they're very old schooler in terms of the dungeon crawl. Etrian Odyssey 4 comes to mind, right? Bravely Default Flying Fairy comes to mind. But in terms of graphical presentation, they were fantastic games on the 3DS. They delivered graphically, they delivered gameplay-wise, and to me, they proved that there's still a time and place for old school dungeon crawler style games. And Rune Factory is another game that's proven that for me. And then even some of the PC fare that's come out, like Legend of Grimrock or Dungeons of Dreadmore, which for any roguelike fans out there is a fantastic modern roguelike. It's turn-based. The graphics aren't super advanced, but they're sure a hell of a step up above ASCII graphics. And they give just enough cuteness to deliver on the cornball humor that's written throughout the game. And you start forgetting that you're wielding +6 garden hose after a few levels in the game because it's so insidiously fun and tough and traditional in all the other areas that count. So Wasteland 2, I'm waiting for you. I know you guys are too. And one of the other things that Fargo threw out in February was the old id adage, it's ready when it's ready. And really, I hope that's the case. I don't want them to rush this game. Not only did I spend a lot of money on the Kickstarter, but I don't want a game that I have to be bummed at loading because I need to wait for a patch because it's horribly broken. I think we all agree we want a rock solid, stable game, and if that means a few months more development or quality assurance testing, Brian Fargo, you do it, man. You do it, because I'm not going to blame you, and I don't think many people will, because the worst thing that could happen to Wasteland 2 is delivering that game and have it be horribly fucking broken. That would be the worst. And Project Eternity and some of the others, same thing applies. This is such a cool time, to be a gamer. Curious what your thoughts are, guys. Let me know, what are your thoughts on Wasteland 2? What are your thoughts on long games, short games? Do you have an ideal duration for your RPGs? Again, for me personally, as long as you're not having to do a lot of grinding or what I call filler time, like, you're watching an anime series and It's 15 episodes, but 5 of them are filler. Fully 33% of the show is fucking filler content. Same thing goes to me for my RPGs. If you're giving me a lot of hours of entertainment that are well paced and don't involve a lot of rehashing of content from earlier levels, I'm all for it. The longer, the better. I don't fucking care. I will enjoy the shit out of that game. But give me a game that's 30, 40 hours and 20 of that is grinding because you want to fill up time, I'm not going to enjoy it. So let me know what you guys think. Really curious to hear. Leave your comments below. Like if you like this video. If you don't, give me a few comments. Let me know what you don't like. Be interested to hear your opinion, because at the end of the day, one of the reasons I created this channel was to engage in dialogue with other gamers, share my passion, but hear the thoughts and opinions of others. Subscribe if you like the content. This is the kind of stuff I'm going to deliver on a weekly basis. I've got some cool videos on the history of 3D that I think you're really going to enjoy, specifically if you've been a PC or console gamer for the last few decades. I think I do a good, solid job of tackling the history of 3D gaming. I've also got a cool project underway in terms of my arcade cabinet, where I go over my current arcade cabinets, and I'm going to do an awesome job documenting my future arcade build. It'll be my 4th arcade cabinet, but I'm going to cover everything from design to building to wiring to the type of emulation and hardware you will need to turn that cabinet into the arcade cabinet of your dreams. And of course, the odd tech reviews and anime reviews along the way. As always, guys, cheers.